So I always knew that it was never going to be straightforward. And I think for my family, there were five shareholders. Those five shareholders had two or three kids each. All my cousins all had kids as well. And five shareholders very, very quickly through a 20-year period when I was going through all my 20s and all my 30s and into my early 40s, became 25 people. And so I wasn't just dealing with a couple of people in my family. I was dealing with a very, very large, broad number of people, ranging from little kids all the way through to my uncle and auntie in their 80s.
Yeah.
The other thing too is that there was, and this is a sort of a very high level stuff.
Yeah.
I had myself as a businessman, as I kind of got into my mid 30s, I was really wanting to take more responsibility and really, grab hold of the reins of the business. And as you would expect, there was that natural conflict between myself and my father, which for the two of us was, a very difficult time.
Big thanks, Arty, for coming.
My pleasure.
Just want to
Thanks,
welcome
Adam.
you to the Garden Room podcast.
Yep.
A little bit of background, how you and I met. We were a couple of boys meeting up at a service station early one morning a few years ago with a few other lads that you and I probably didn't know that well. And really early, I think it was sunrise.
Yep.
Then we took a nice, short, sharp drive up into the hills. And you and I kind of just connected a bit from there. And I guess then you invited me to a sort of a networking lunch, which was excellent. And then it turned out that we're trained at the same gym.
Yep.
And I guess that's just how our relationship started. We both saw in each other maybe some similarities in age.
Yeah.
Our sort of detail that we like to see in life and routine and trying to finally put the fucking shit all together, right? And make it work for us.
Yeah.
So big thanks, welcome.
Thank
And
you.
I guess just want to start with you, get back into a little bit about you. Maybe if you want to, ease into your childhood.
Yep.
And just talk us through about how you've got to where you are today and some of the really, the crazy shit that's happened, the traumatic things that's happened and how that's all led to you, becoming a more successful human today.
Yep. That's great introduction. Thanks for having me. It's a beautiful location. So my life, I was a country kid. I grew up in the Gulf of Carpentaria. It was a very small town called Corumba, which a lot of people know as being a barramundi location for amateur fishermen. My family were professional fishermen, and so I grew up in a fishing community. It was only about 120 people in the town. This was in the late 70s, early 80s, and everybody that was associated with that town were agriculturalists. So there was cattle stations all around Corumba. There was a lot of fishermen in town, and that was really the primary kind of jobs and the existence of that place. I grew up there, went to school there, went to primary school all the way through till grade 7. There was only like 25 kids in the school, and all my friends at school were same thing. All their families were all professional fishermen, and so that or associated services, engineering companies for helping fix boats. That was my life, and we all had a motorbike, we all had a gun, and we were always on adventures as kids, and spent a lot of time riding motorbikes and shooting, and really that was my life. And then I had to go off to boarding school but so did all my friends. So it didn't seem to be such a big leap of faith at that time, because a lot of my friends in my class were going to the same boarding school. And so I went to boarding school in Townsville, and did most of my schooling there until my parents moved to Cairns in that sort of mid-'80s. And then I moved back home and went to school in Cairns. So I consider myself a North Queensland boy, a agricultural kid. My family were always involved in fishing. We had a period of time where my family also owned a cattle station. So if I wasn't on the prawn trawler, we're out at the cattle station, and then we're around horses and cattle and prawns and fish and sort of between that life. And that's really what I knew. And it really started to sort of form my view of the world and what I sort of wanted to do. I knew that I would always want to pursue that type of lifestyle and continue on to be, have that interest in agriculture. So that kind of took me up until when I finished school in 1988, and that's when my family then moved to Brisbane, and I moved here with them as I finished school. So that was kind of my childhood, was just country town, North Queensland, motorbikes, outdoor adventure, fishing, camping, which was just, it just felt very free for that period of my time. I look back at that and I also get very excited when people say to me, oh, I'm from North Queensland, or I'm from that area, and I always seem to connect well with people in that space. Yeah.
Great. And tell me, so when did you start to really develop into business, and what did that journey? I know that you've been involved in a family business up until recently.
Yep.
So can you map out some of the interesting journey that you and I have spoken about previously?
Yeah.
Because really what we're really trying to do is just to show people that behind everything, things are not what they seem.
Yeah.
And that experiences from the outside looking in is sometimes very different from being on the inside of a big family corporate company.
Yeah, sure. So I finished school, and I wasn't entirely sure what the sort of next step was going to be, but I went to university and started studying. I studied at UQ, but then I was also working part-time for the family business, for a bit of money, as you do. Also had a very keen interest in music, which I was at the same time trying to pursue, hoping to, get into the music industry, and so I was kind of playing music, working in the family business, but I continued to get drawn deeper and deeper into the family business, almost subliminally, and without kind of really realizing what was going on, because opportunities would come up, and then I would then take those opportunities. As a staff member would leave, I would then fill that role, run that job, then find somebody to replace myself, and then I'd sort of go, and then I'd be almost ready to leave the business, and then my father would be, oh, there's somebody else has left, can you look after that? And I kind of went around lots of departments within our business doing that job, replacing that person, and so quite a lot of time had passed, maybe like 10 years, and I was like, wow, 10 years has gone by, and I've done a lot of jobs in this company, and I was being, I guess, mentored by a number of family members. One was my father, and then another family member was my uncle. And so my father, his name was George, and then my uncle, his name was Con. And so I was getting mentored by both my father and my uncle, and learning a number of different skill sets around my development as a businessman.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky. I was very, very fortunate for that, because my father's skill set was that true entrepreneurial spirit. And then my uncle's skill set was more in trading. And so I was really learning about both those things. At the same time, my father also had a very keen interest in engineering. And because we owned a lot of trawlers, boats were always at the shipyard, We were building trawlers. I got exposed to a lot of engineering around that time, or right throughout my career with him. And I myself developed and built a really keen interest in engineering, which is one of the main reasons why I'm so interested in cars as my hobby. I really built those skill sets through my family, and that's what really sort of paved my way forward with my development as a businessman.
Right. And tell me, as you are sounding like you got absorbed into that business, tell me how things developed, and tell me some of the tough things that you've had to go through that perhaps for people looking in, they'd never realize what goes in or what goes on, and the pressures and the personalities and the family stuff that goes on.
Yep.
Can you everyone would love to hear that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt that there's complexity in family business, and I knew about that from I was in an organisation called the Entrepreneurs Organisation for many years, and my peers in that group in Forum were also, quite a number of them were from family businesses that were also having issues and difficulties with their family. Plus also I joined fairly early in my career Family Business Australia, and same thing, I was exposed to lots of businesses, lots of families and all their trials and tribulations. So I always knew that it was never going to be straightforward. And I think for my family, there were 5 shareholders. Those 5 shareholders had 2 or 3 kids each. All my cousins all had kids as well. And 5 shareholders very, very quickly through a 20-year period when I was going through all my 20s and all my 30s and into my early 40s, became 25 people. And so I wasn't just dealing with a couple of people in my family. I was dealing with a very, very large, broad number of people, ranging from, little kids all the way through to my uncle and auntie in their 80s.
Yeah.
The other thing too is that there was, and this is a sort of a very high level stuff.
Yeah.
I had myself as a businessman, as I kind of got into my mid-30s, I was really wanting to take more responsibility and really, grab hold of the reins of the business. And as you would expect, there was that natural conflict between myself and my father, which for the two of us was, a very difficult time. I was ready. He wasn't that keen because he was still a very active businessman. I then broke away and left and went down to Sydney to open up a division of our business just to sort of get away. That became very successful. And then my father wanted me to come back to Brisbane because he was getting older and having some health issues. And so that there was that real kind of power struggle within my family, as you would expect, and it's the same the world over, that I was just really hungry to be in charge.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a matter of asking. For me, it was really, I almost imagine being on a bus and just walking down the front and grabbing the driver and just pulling me away from the wheel and just grabbing the wheel myself without even asking. And that was really my nature and my style, was to really just take charge. Then my father and I were embarking on a journey of property development and getting involved in property, which he had a really keen interest in, and he had a certain philosophy around that, and I was following him off to do that, and the business became quite significant. So then it gave me an opportunity for him to run the property company and myself to run the fishing company. But even when I was then ultimately in charge, as I sort of got into my late 30s, early 40s, I was never really in charge because you've just got, for us, I had so many other family members to deal with. and give consideration to and listen to and give respect to. And so whilst I wouldn't describe it as catastrophic, there was certainly a lot of challenging periods where, if you've got 10 people in the room, everybody's got a different opinion or a different view, but ultimately I've got to make a decision. So often within the culture of our family and our business was, if you did 7 things right, well, that was just normal. But if those 2 things that you did wrong, there tended to be more of a blame mentality and a very emotional piece around that, being Greek heritage, Greek culture, that sort of very emotional piece. So the business landscape for me, as I became in charge and I was CEO, we had 300 staff. There was always a great deal of complexity around making decisions, and I think that's where it led to a lot of second guessing, a lot of taking counsel from a lot of people and trying to navigate different people's views and opinions and respecting family, and just the sheer number of family members made that quite difficult. But at the same time, we were running very successful businesses. So I think I was very tolerant. My family were also very tolerant as well. And I certainly would never want to play that sort of victim piece. But, and at the same time, I know that family businesses can be quite complex. And so I was just essentially doing the best I could with the business that I was running, and just enjoying that journey with all the drama, with all the theatre, with various family members who, as you would expect, have got different opinions and views and can be quite harsh. But I think by my nature, I've always been quite a strong person, and so I've been able to just sort of dismiss a lot of that and just keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
And so I then was running the family business for 13 years, so as CEO. So I worked in the family company for 32 years, and of those, 13 to 14 of them were, about 13 years was as CEO of quite a significant, quite a large organisation.
Yeah. Wow. And tell me, along the way with your journey, how was there some trauma? Was there some pain that you and so tell us a little bit about that, and because families, and I've been through some similar stuff.
Yep.
Not on the scale of your size of family business, but things can get pretty hectic, and sometimes we deal with it in strange ways. So tell me about how you did deal with it, and how you've changed the way you do things.
That's a really interesting piece, because I guess if you look at the type of person I am in my professional life, I'm a very tough, strong businessman, has very high expectations of people. But in my private life, I'm actually quite a gentle, soft, kind person. And so I've always had a clear delineation between the two, so that when I go home, the way I engage with my wife, my children, my friends is one of kindness. But in the business setting, I'm quite strict. And so what happened was, I about 10 years ago went through a divorce, and I was very, very unhappily married, and decided that I knew that I had to do something about it, that I wasn't going to just continue to suffer within my relationship, and that I wanted to make a move, make a change, turn over a fresh page for myself. My family dealt with that very poorly. They saw it as a huge inconvenience.
Wow.
And I had very little support from my immediate family, my mother, my father, and my sister. They were quite harsh. My extended family would often chip me for having to go and see my lawyer and taking time away from work. And because there were other family members that mostly had not gone through divorce, they just didn't know how to deal with it, how to deal with me, to give me time to deal with my affairs appropriately, to give me that support that I needed. And it was also at a time when business was going quite well. So it's like, how dare you, take time off to deal with your own personal matters when we're making money? And so to me, that was devastating.
Yeah.
And the only way I could deal with that was really to drown my sorrows.
Yeah.
And it was one of the worst situations for me because I'd never in the past had a disposition for drinking. And really, I just felt it was the one thing that kind of gave me some reprieve. And so I wasn't really dealing with my emotional self appropriately. And then there was like a rock bottom moment where I realized and took some guidance that I needed to get some help.
Yeah.
And so as a consequence of getting help, I now, support people in whatever business setting that I'm in, to support those that are going through difficulties and now know how to deal with it, because how I was dealt with was so harsh that I now know what it is that, I need to do for others,
Yes.
and how to go about that.
Yeah.
And so fast forward the tape, I haven't had a drink for, I don't know, close to 10 years, 8.5, 10 years.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's nearly 9 years. Sorry, not 10, no, nearly 9, and it's been the best decision that I could have made for my own well-being, because I, turned to what's good for me and my well-being, which was no drinking. I've never really smoked. I haven't had a smoke for like 25 years. Sport is a really, really big part of my well-being.
Yep.
I check in with somebody on my mental piece, on a semi-regular basis, whether I need to go or not.
Yeah.
And I really, look after myself both physically and mentally now, so that I can stay on top of my game for both my work and my family.
Yeah.
For my wife, for my children, to be there as a stable person, and to be able to work effectively in the workplace. So yeah, that was probably the harshest time for me emotionally. And then it started to lead on to other issues after that.
Yeah.
With my family.
Yeah. So do you see, I tend to talk about this a lot, sometimes that you can call it rock bottom or you can call it darkness. Sometimes we need to break before we can put the pieces back in a more orderly fashion. I find that in life we get caught up and we're very creatures of routine. So we end up, if your routine is not so healthy, if that means a few extra drinks,
yeah,
sleeping pattern's not good, eating pattern's not good, relationships are not good, we tend to find it difficult to break those little wheels. And I guess what I find is what's happened with myself and most other people I speak to, that at some point everyone has a breaking point. Everyone has a tipping point where they have to make change, or life is going to become very difficult and probably not worth living.
Yeah.
To put it in a simple term.
Yeah.
So, but you don't actually get to that point if you're only 60% broken.
That's right.
You need to get to the full extent, so that you actually have a out of body moment where you can look at yourself and go, fuck me, how did I get to here? I need to do A, B, C, D, E as soon as possible. And how am I going to go about that? So I guess I find this is such a similar pattern for people who have become a better human, and are more useful to themselves, to the business, to their loved ones. There's always that point of darkness before you climb back out.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, and I had that. I had that medical moment. I had that rock bottom moment where, my doctor was saying to me, this is actually really serious.
Yep.
And so I needed to make a change. And it's a bit cliche. It's almost like the guy that has the heart attack that then decides to go on a diet and get fit.
Yep.
For me, it was the equivalent of that,
Yep.
but more in a mental state,
Yeah.
a psychological piece.
Yeah.
And that's essentially, you're absolutely right. There's that rock bottom moment that then drives behaviour, and desperation will often drive change.
Correct.
When you're desperate enough, you will do something about it. But if you're not desperate enough, you're not really going to be looking for those solutions. And for me, I was at that stage, that desperation stage. Yeah.
So, like, you've got some really exciting. You've exited the family business
Yep.
that you and I have spoken about. You've got a wonderful new partner, Terry, who I've
Yep.
met. She's an amazing lady, and you guys are doing some really cool stuff together.
Yep.
And then you've just finally embarked on something that's more personal, business-wise for you, that you feel very wanted, some amazing opportunities. And I
Yeah.
guess I see it from me being your friend and being able to look at your position and what you've been through, which has been quite traumatic for you. I'm looking at now this is an opportunity for you to move outside that shadow of that big family business,
Yep.
utilize everything that you've learned, even including perhaps some mistreatment of yourself, and knowing that you won't do that to other people. And the excitement that you showed me and what we've had chats about you now having a piece of the action in a brand new business.
Yep.
And being able to really showcase your passion, your discipline, and your just don't take no for an answer attitude. And I guess for me as a friend, I've just been so happy, man, to see you.
Yeah.
It's been a tough climb, right, to get from one space to the other. But now that you're into that, I guess I just feel very thankful to be your friend and being able to watch you take that journey. For
Thanks.
one.
Thank you.
And secondly, I guess I'm excited about this new Arty space.
Yeah.
And that, you've got an opportunity now to really, I think you and I are in our early 50s. Sometimes I look at 20 or 30 years previous as a bit of a long-term apprenticeship. And at some point, it feels like someone's let you out of the gate, or someone's opened up a fresh door.
Yeah.
And I think we can talk about it in a minute, but you and I's one of those issues with that is once you get excited and you're passionate and you find somewhere to run to, sometimes you just run too hard.
Yep.
And you've really got to look after your mental and physical well-being, because you're so excited and you feel like you've been held for so long that when you get that opportunity, it's almost like it's a bit intoxicating.
It is.
Tell me about your new stuff and and where you want to go with it, and tell me how you're balancing that out with being able to handle everything that's like this huge change as well, right? So
no, and it's been a huge change for me. And so leading up to that change, I was in my late 40s. I was heading for 50, and I really wanted to be a business owner.
Yeah.
And I wasn't provided with that opportunity with my family. I was always ever treated as an employee. And I had flagged that with my immediate family and extended family. And unfortunately, where it landed was somewhere that I was never, ever going to have that opportunity. And so a lot of my professional peers were business owners, and I just knew that I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be a business owner. And I knew that I could find that opportunity or pursue, whether it was working for someone or starting something from new. And so I started to think that way when I knew that working for my family was going to be a complete dead end when it came to that equity piece. And so when my father passed away, unfortunately, I wasn't able to be provided with that equity piece. And so that when working with him for 30 years, that hung very heavily over me. That was some really heavy bricks to be pushing in my barrow. And without sounding like a sport brat or a victim, I had been working for my family for such a long time and running the company for a long time through some incredibly successful periods. And then all I was really subscribing to was just a wage. And so for me, that was never ever going to be enough. And the wage piece was actually not the critical piece for me. It was really about that business ownership. So I wasn't really sure what to do or how to go about it, but I went and started talking to a friend of mine who's a recruiter. And he said to me that, really good CEOs, they don't wait till a CEO job pops up on Seek. They usually are tapped on the shoulder and will be asked to go and, run a company, and they'll make themselves known to that respective industry sector that they're available, and, talk to the chairmans of those companies or the owners of those businesses. And so I was armed with that information, and I knew I wanted to do that. And at the same time, I still wanted to start something from scratch as well. So I with my my current partner, Terry, her and I started a business from scratch called the Business Bunch, and that was really exciting, and it's becoming a very successful business. I own a little less than her, but I am an owner in her company, and so I got a bit of a taste for what it was like to be an owner of a business. And but that was never ever going to be my full-time gig. And so I then started networking more and more with agricultural people in the agri space that I knew, and I approached my current business partners about starting a new company, and if they were interested in investing in it. And they just said to me, well, it just so happens that we've actually got a fishing company, and this is what it is and how it looks. Would you be interested in running that company? And I said, well, yeah, I would, but I really want to own part of the business. So they were very kind enough to allow me to buy in at the original price that they bought in at, their original investment piece. They also gave me the opportunity where they gifted me shares as well. And, and I did all the transfers of the monies and signed all the contracts. And there was really a moment in time where I really didn't have any choice. There was no coming back. And there was that final signature on a contract that I remember I was about to sign, and I was starting to second guess myself because of the enormity of what I was doing. I was taking a very big pay cut. I was running a smaller company, but the company was going to be mine, or partly mine. There was a lot of opportunity in that business. And I remember talking to my wife, Terry, about it and saying, I'm just not sure. And she gave me some really great advice. And she said, well, if you're going to stay in your family business, you better suck it up and stay there and just continue on your journey. Or you put your big boy pants on, and you make an adult decision. And she said, either way, I support whatever decision you want to make. And so while she really didn't influence me one way or the other, I did take some comfort, from every good man, there's behind him is a good woman. And I really felt that sense of support at a really crucial time. So I signed that final contract, and then I had no choice but to go and see my family and say that I'm leaving. And what ended up happening is that rather there being a sense of understanding and respect and appreciation for my years of service, I was dealt with in a very, very harsh way, and I was essentially told to tell the staff and leave immediately.
Wow.
And so I was prepared to stay on and help on board and find a CEO like I'd found our chairman and, make those really important, assist in those important decisions. But they, in their wisdom, they kicked me to the curb. And so...
After 30 years.
Yeah. But,
families.
But you know what? At the same time, I knew that I couldn't carry that emotional baggage into my new business and my new future, because it would have clouded the decisions that I was making as a businessman and wanting to make very clear decisions and good decisions without all that baggage. So I literally had to throw all those emotional bricks out of my wheelbarrow so that I had a light barrow and that I was agile in my movements and my decision making. And I knew that I didn't want to take on that victim mentality and really forge ahead in my new future. And so I've done that. And so I don't hold any grudges against family. I don't hold any ill feeling towards anyone, whether it's my cousins, my uncles, my auntie, my immediate family, my mother, my sister, and their engagement or lack of engagement with me. Partly it's because of me, mostly because of them. But really wanted to sort of, I guess, just exactly like what Terry said, like put your big boy pants on and be an adult and make adult decisions.
Make the hard decisions,
yeah,
right?
And there was a lot of risk involved in it and a lot of uncertainty. And so I then started my new job.
And tell me how, I know I spoke to you just before you started your job and you're extremely nervous but also super excited. Tell me, what are we now, 3-4 months in?
Yeah, and what's interesting about my new role is that we keep all the animals alive,
Yep.
and we sell them live, and we own all the quota in the fishery, and we lease it to the fishermen, and they catch it on our behalf. And it's the complete opposite of my previous business life, which was we kill all the animals, we own all the boats, and we catch it all ourselves. And so this is kind of like the complete opposite, where it's become a bit of an animal husbandry piece, where we've got to care and nurture for those animals. So they're caught. So it's a coral trout. It's caught live by fishermen on these vessels, and on those vessels they have these smaller tinnies called dories, and they tow 5 to 7 dories out to the reef, and then they catch. Each fisherman gets in a dory for the day, and he catches live or catches coral trout, and then puts them in a well inside his dory, and keeps them alive. And then they're transported or transferred to their mothership.
Yep.
Later in the day. So they're out fishing all day in the sun. They then put the fish on board the mothership, and then that vessel comes into port. We then and we've got a number of depots. We've got 2 depots in Cairns, one in Bowen, one in Mackay, one in Brisbane. A couple of them I've since set up just to sort of broaden the business.
Yep.
We go out to the fishermen with our trucks, and we've got tanks on board. We transfer the fish live into our tanks, and then we transport those fish to our depot, where we put them in very large tanks, and we can sort and grade the fish and ensure that their well-being is met. And then at a moment in time, we then transfer those fish into transportation bins, and then they're flown from various locations, and generally they find their way to Hong Kong, China, America, UAE, where our customer base is receiving those animals alive and then selling them to their customers alive, which they then put them in their tanks in a restaurant. And you'd walk into a restaurant and you'd pick that fish and they'd scoop it out and it'd be alive, and then they prepare the dish and then they put it on the table. Wow. It's a very, very expensive process, and it's a very, very expensive product. And so I'm dealing at a very high value end, and it requires a lot of duty of care. And that duty of care comes in a couple of ways. One of them is that the bins the transportation bin that we're putting on a plane, generally they're flights with passengers, and in those transportation bins, it has a oxygen cylinder and a regulator, which is described as a dangerous good. And so that DG has the potential for exploding and could bring down a passenger plane. And so I've had to be certified by CASA. All our equipment has to be certified by CASA. And I've got ultimate responsibility for not only the fish, but the people on board the flight as well. And so it's a very, very big responsibility to take. And we've got fish going out on just about every airline out of the country, especially from Brisbane, is currently every day.
Wow.
And so all that equipment needs to be monitored, maintained, pulled apart, rebuilt very, very regularly.
Yeah.
And there's a great deal of responsibility that comes in a very broad sense in this job. And so, it's just different. And with the skills that I learnt from my uncles and my father have put me in really, really good stead in the way that I'm navigating the success of this company. And so whilst I tell a sad story about my family and, poor Arty and woe is me, the reality is that where I've landed is going to provide me with the most incredible future where I'm running a very successful business. I'm an owner of another company. I've just recently been asked to be a chairman of another business. And then on top of that, we're embarking on a very, very large project in Brisbane over the next 18 months where it's essentially a $100 million project. And all of those things I would never have been able to do if I was still working for my family. And so the world has really opened up for me, stepping away from what was convenient, comfortable, and sort of supported with that safety net of family.
Yeah.
And really stepping out and having to be responsible for myself is now, amazingly, I'm having a lot of people call me, text me, talk to me, want to catch up with me and speak about various projects on various things. And I'm getting to the stage now where I'm actually having to start to say no because of that issue around you mentioned before around burnout, which is I'm starting to feel and I'm suffering from a little at the moment.
Yeah. So you've come out of the gate pretty hard with the new companies, super excited and passionate as you always are. And I think it's easy to get to burnout stage quicker in a new company that's happy to pivot quicker. Because in the older companies, perhaps like your family company before, decisions don't happen quickly. There's too many people where if you've been given pretty much, a fairly solid free range to try and grow this new company. That means that you can pivot quickly, you can make decisions quickly because as we all know, procrastination is the, it's the killer of a good business. Especially one that's got a lot of opportunity and a lot of growth, which it sounds like where you are. So, it's the mindset, right, behind how the powers that be were running this other company before in your family business to now your ability to pivot and being able to seize opportunities, which is essentially what you're doing. But then when you get that opportunity to move so quickly, you can wear yourself out pretty quick, right? Because even though you're fit and you're very disciplined and you're obsessive, everyone's got a point. And I think as we spoke about before, you've just found that point and you've just trying to chill just a little. And I think that's really important. I think also too, not allowing yourself to break again is really important, to see the warning signs, to kind of go, hang on a minute, I'm feeling a bit this way or a bit that way. I guess you become better at self-managing once you've known what it's like on the other side of not managing yourself correctly for whatever reason. And I think, is that how you feel, like mindset-wise now you're a better read of yourself, how you feel, how the others around you are feeling, and then you're able to modify yourself better than you probably previously did? Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that you've said there that are really true. So the first one being that this new business is much more agile, and the reason being is that my business partners are a similar age to me. They also own lots and lots of other companies, and so they're already successful across a number of other businesses. And they're very, very savvy business people. And because they can't run the company that I'm running, their counsel to me is that whatever decision you make, Arty, that's final. You don't need to come and check with us. You have total autonomy in the decisions that you're making, whether it's good or bad. So if it's bad, you can learn from your mistake and continue on. If it's good, that's great.
Yeah.
And so that level of autonomy I've not been used to, and it's quite refreshing. But then it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right?
Absolutely.
And so I've come in all guns blazing, and I can very quickly see the issues, the problems, what needs to be overcome, and then setting those very high expectations of my new staff, and then pushing them in a particular way that I have a business style where I set quite high expectations of people, and then I become connected to them to assist them into reaching those expectations. And because it's been quite fast-paced, a lot faster than what they've been used to, it's created a lot of excitement for me.
Yeah.
Because, my success with this new company is non-negotiable. I don't have a fallback position. My fallback position would have been going back to my family, saying I made a mistake, it didn't work out, trying to get some sort of job back. To me, that would be really humiliating. And so that's really at the pointy end of what's driving me is that, like you said earlier, plan A is it. There is no plan B.
Yeah.
And so I've been so excited about seeing the very quick success where you're going to hire someone, fire someone, give someone a promotion, kick a few goals, all in a very quick piece of time, in a short space of time. Otherwise, incoming CEO can't just sort of sit back and do nothing. And so I've gone absolutely ballistic. And then I've got to the last couple of days and I'm really starting to suffer. And my health has gone down. I've been training every single day physically for an upcoming triathlon race, which I compete in every summer. I do a number of triathlons through the summer period. My training is important to me, and running at this pace mentally and overlaying training for triathlons every single day, my system is essentially just about shut down. But I did what I should always do, and that is consult my GP, take some advice, take some rest, regroup a little bit, and then plan a break. Plan a break so that I've got something to look forward to, so that I can have proper rest. But it's at the same time, it's hard to stop when you own the business or you're a part owner in a company.
Yeah,
it's hard to stop.
It's addictive.
It's very, very addictive, and it becomes all day and all night, right up until before you go to bed.
For sure. I couldn't agree more. It's the first, you think about it in the morning and you think about it when you go to sleep. And, I guess the good thing is that you see these warning signs early, and you've mentally prepared that you realize at some point that you're going to have these little periods. And to become, I guess, more effective, sometimes we do need just to take these little micro stops and reevaluate things, because we can all think that just working is really effective. But if you're working and you're starting to become fatigued and your immune system's down and you're perhaps not getting through the work you should, the decisions are more difficult, and then perhaps your relationships suffer a little bit because of that, I think sometimes working more is not always working better.
That's
I think
right.
You need to judge, yes, we want to do big days, but you want to also plan in there to have that recheck, and then to make sure that your consistency and the amount of your ability to make good decisions quickly don't get compromised by our, overwhelming drive to go, success, build, do. I think sometimes it's really important. It takes you a little while, and you have to hurt yourself a little bit along the way. It has been for me be able to go really hard and then give myself a little micro break. And reevaluate, how am I feeling? How am I looking? How's things progressing? I think I'm doing a lot, but really, could I do better if I was actually a little bit fresher? And I think when we're fresher, we're more effective, right?
Yeah.
So what you think should have taken this long, if you were more effective and feeling fresh, could have got it done in half the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And a shout out to a mutual friend of ours, Chris Ricks.
Yes.
you and I have been on one of his immersion trips. I met Chris a couple of years ago when I started doing Outward Bound,
Yep.
hiking adventures
Yes.
with a pack, with a 25 kilo pack, hiking for days, overnighting, roughing it, being self-sufficient, and having a pack and being under a bit of physical duress, plus also being in the outdoors. It did something, and I've done about 4 or 5 of those trips now with him over the years. I've got another one coming up, and it's been described by Chris as being that connection to country,
Absolutely.
and so I never really understood that because mine was connection to my PC. That was my life.
Yeah.
Connection to country. It became, going out on a hiking adventure for a couple of days through pretty rugged, thick, dense rainforest and bushland, and 2 days hiking is the equivalent to me, was like taking a week off. And so I've plus and minus a few toenails falling off. I've really enjoyed that as a mechanism or a form of being able to wind down. And Chris has always encouraged me to do that by myself, even for the day. I've done that a little bit, but I'm still not totally confident in doing it myself. I'm still sort of, I guess, guided by Chris and his experience as an adventurous and a survivalist.
Yes.
And so that's been a really important part of my physical and mental recovery from overworking, and that connection to country piece. The more I do it, the more I start to see the landscape in a very different way. I'm not saying that I fully understand it, but I do see some of the things that Chris describes in terms of different animals or people or sort of landscape. The sort of the vision that I get from being in that landscape and having that sense of connection, and I wouldn't never have understood that unless I did it, and it didn't come straight away. It's taken a while, but it's just so therapeutic, so amazing, and helping other people on the trip. Like I've been on trips where others have really struggled and assisted them with carrying their pack or putting up their tent. Some that have been a little less experienced. That connection that you get with people on those trips also builds very strong bonds.
Yes.
Rather than, going to a lunch or
Well,
something.
I think it definitely helped you and I, to become even closer on that last immersion that we did together. And I can definitely agree on when we did that, in the dark or the sunrise, welcome to country, and stood around and did the smoking ceremony. And, that changed something in me. That gave me a connection that morning that still gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
And the hardships that followed over the next 36 hours for us was a real game changer to me. And I, like you, when I came back, I actually reflected on myself, on the business, on my family, on everything with a lot more clarity, and I guess maybe perhaps a little less ego and a little bit more humility than what I'd done before I left.
I was the same. And at that moment, that's when it became clearer about my need to want to stop being that kind of victim and actually take my future into my own hands and do something about it. And so that really sort of supercharged me into making those future decisions was on that trip.
Yeah.
And so, and then on top of that, like looking after myself physically, there's a direct correlation between that and my mental well-being. So when I'm really fit, I feel like I have a greater capacity to handle, emotional pressure, work pressure, family pressure, and all those, things in between. And so, I really enjoy the outdoors and also my physical training as a mechanism of being really successful at my business, being able to go to work the next day and have a really strong capacity to be able to work hard. And that only comes from, being physically fit.
Yeah.
And so I approach my my work life, like I'm competing. I am a very highly competitive person, and I don't just want to win. I want to crush the competitors.
Yeah.
Like I want to be beyond successful in whatever it is I do, to the point of almost obsessive. But that's just me. And maybe I do take things too far, but it is who I am. But ultimately, I'm really enjoying the decisions that I've made, the future that I'm creating for myself, learning along the way, making good friendships along the way, like with yourself. I only have a very small handful of close friends. You're one of them, and who are understanding my journey and providing me with that mentorship and that support from those close friends. The rest of my friendship circle is really business associates and friends of friends, and that's all well and good. But, to me, I've got 4 really close friends, and that's enough.
It is.
Yeah, that is enough.
I think the older we get, and I've found exactly the same, and you have lots of acquaintances, but very few true friends that can share your good times and your bad times. A lot of people are fair weather players, and I think a real friend is going to just want you to succeed. They're going to want you to see you happy, to see you challenged, to see you break a bit, help you back up, watch you get back up, watch you go back to war, watch you go back to do your thing. And to me, I don't think in our busy lives and how we're built, I don't think there's the ability to foster too many of those people.
Yeah, I totally
because
agree.
we only have so much time.
I totally agree. And on top of that, it's interesting that when you go through a really difficult time, the people that you expect to support you run for the hills.
They do. Or they just go quiet, right?
Or they go quiet. And those that you don't expect it from are there to come to your aid and support you. And so that in itself has been a good way for me to sort of work out who would I want to be connected to and who I don't want to be connected to.
Yeah.
And it's got nothing to do with, financial status. It's got nothing to do with any sort of monetary thing. It's got more to do with, I guess, care, being a caring human. And at the same time, like when like if my friends are in a room and I walk in the room, everybody's yelling for me to come sit here, finding a seat for me, really supporting, me as a close friend. And I love that. It took me a very, very long time to work and land on that space, but I'm really happy, where I've landed both with my new wife, my new job, my new friends. I've landed in a place that's really healthy for me. And I feel finally, at 52 years old, that I've finally grown up and I'm now an adult. And I know that sounds weird.
No, it doesn't.
But I actually do. I think I'm now at a maturity level that I can deal with all these things in a very mature adult way. And that's been wonderful for me in terms of the health of my relationship with my wife, helping to support my kids, helping to support my staff, pushing my business forward, dealing with my business partners and building a strong relationship with them. And so I feel finally I can breathe, a little bit tired, but I'm...
But happy tired, right?
Yeah, happy tired.
Yeah.
And feeling valued in both professionally and personally.
Yeah,
and it's
a big
wonderful.
one. It's a big one. As I said earlier, a lot of us get caught up on the wheel and there is no value there. And we're doing it just because that's what we know what to do. And the important thing is that we eventually take the falls, take the arrows, and are strong enough to get back up and to get to where we are.
Yep.
And I guess from my point of view, I'd love to catch up with you again in another year or so.
Yep.
Because you've got so many things happening on quite a few different companies.
Yep.
Also about our personal stuff and where we're at as men and as fathers and as partners. And also our interests. Obviously, you and I love getting in cars. We like going to the gym. We do love punishing ourselves out in the bush on some crazy friggin' hikes.
Yeah.
So no, man, I really respect you, and I guess that's where like you, I've only got a handful of friends too that I can actually have these type of conversations with. That we're podcast or no podcast, you and I cut straight to the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Like today's just a conversation, and you and I have had very similar conversations before, and it's so nice to be able to find other humans, and especially I think women tend to be able to open up a little bit more, but us men tend to be a little bit more guarded. And when you can find a handful of really strong, grounded men who are manly enough or masculine enough to show their soft side, and to say, hey, these are my faults, these are my fuck ups, and know that that person's not going to judge you. They're going to go, okay, here's mine. This is what I've done. This is what I'm still fucking up, and this is what I'm trying to do about it. I guess in my life now, I don't have issues with friends with problems. I can't have friends who've got problems and don't want to solve them. Because to me, it's like a business. If you know it's going bad, or a relationship, fix it. So you need to do the same with yourself. So I don't have time for the small talk and bullshit banter about tomorrow or next week or next month. I think good friendship's really based around understanding where each other's at, understanding what the problem might be and what the solution might be, and then just watching each other go for it and helping where you can. You know, I think that's just makes such a huge difference, and I think that's where you and I have fallen into. So yeah, man, I just want to say big thanks for today.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing too. I know a lot of that stuff's been an emotional ride for you over the last 2 years especially, but really more so over the last 12 months. It's been pretty taxing on you, and for you to bounce back like you have and taken on this whole new stuff, I'm very humbled, and obviously my admiration for you has grown from even where I thought it was a year ago. So big thanks for today, and man, I would love to get you back on in a year or so, and you and I can talk about all our escapades and where we're at as humans, right? Which is the most important thing.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Adam. I really appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really like spending time with you, and this was a great opportunity for me too to do this and really showcase, my life, and I'm just a person. I'm a human being with feelings, and it's nice to be here, and it's nice to be appreciated too. And I too really enjoy our friendship. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure. Thanks, Arty.